Good afternoon, everybody. Sound all right? All right, great. Brethren, I think that songs really tie in well to what I'm about to talk about. Focused on Jesus, thought the offertory message. It's amazing how it seems like God always keeps that thread of unity together. I was thinking about that offertory message, and I was thinking about my journey. And this sermon was actually inspired, I have to give credit where credit is due, to a man that Mark Willie mentioned, Garner Ted Armstrong. I actually pulled out a cassette tape from 20 years ago, and I can't believe it was 20 years ago that I heard this tape. It seems like a year ago. And I wanted to listen to the tape again, and I couldn't find a cassette player. So I had to go sit out in the van. Our van actually has a cassette player, so I just wanted to listen to it before I gave the message. So this morning, before Terry was up and the kids were up, I was in our garage in the minivan listening to the tape. Now, I'd like to go out and buy a cassette player, but I don't even know if I can buy them anymore. So if any of you have a cassette player you want to get rid of, come see me after services. Because, seriously, I've got a little bucket, I don't know, about 50 tapes. And there is a wealth, a treasure of truth and knowledge in those cassettes. And it's just a testament of how the tithes and offerings of all of God's people before me were able to make sure that I had access to that tape. And that was one of those tapes. I don't know if you have certain sermons that you remember, but that particular sermon was one that I remember to this day. It really had an impact on my life. So that's the topic or the inspiration behind this message. I want to start, brethren, by just asking a question. How many friends do you have? I have 53. One of my friends has 436. My niece has 1,253 friends. See, I know this because I saw it on Facebook. I don't know if any of you, if you don't know what Facebook is, it's an internet site where you can log on and you invite people who are your friends to just be able to see your page. So 53 friends, that's not bad. I mean, compared to my niece, I'm not a very popular person, I guess. So that's a great blessing. My niece must be really blessed to have 1,253 friends. I mean, when she needs something, the probability is someone's going to be able to help her, right? How many friends do you have? I'd say you probably have quite a few. Many acquaintances. I think we'd all realize that some of those 1,253 friends, or some of my 53 friends on Facebook, some are actually stronger friends than others. Some are kind of acquaintances. I mean, they're friendly. I like them. I think they like me. They don't know me that well, though, and if it all comes down to it, I don't know them that well. I know a lot of people at work. I work with a lot of people. If I think of all the people that I know at work, it's hundreds. I know them by first name, and they're friendly. I like them. I would hope that they would think I'm friendly. Maybe they would consider me a friend. But when it comes down to it, I don't really know that much about them. I don't even know their middle names. Some of them, I don't even know their last names. Well, I do. I could look it up in a little address book online. But you see what I'm saying? We have different levels of friendship. A lot of us have social friends. Now, these are pretty cool, social friends. We spend a lot of time with them for a short period of our life. They're fun to be around. We go out with them. I've had a lot of different waves of social friends. How about you? How many of you have had best friends in high school or in college? You can think back in your lives. I mean, while you were best friends, they were the closest. You were like this. How often do you see them now? If you're really lucky, you'll have a handful of really close friends. maybe even one or two. The question, brethren, who is your best friend? My dad told me when I was a kid one time, I remember I used to get picked on in school. And I don't know, I remember this. I was confiding with my dad, complaining about being picked on, and I think I said something about, I don't have any friends or something like that. I remember my dad told me, he says, you know what, son, when you get older, you're going to find out that your best friends are your family. And that's been pretty true. I think my dad gave me some pretty wise insight there. So again, who is your best friend? Take a moment and think about it. Who really, really knows you? When things get tough, who do you confide in? Who do you trust? Sure, we know a lot of people. We have a lot of people we like to hang out with, but who is really that one person that when we're in a foxhole, and it comes right down to it, that's the person we want by our side? See, it's hard to get to know people. It's hard for us to let people really inside to get to know us. You know, Jesus, I want to turn over to John chapter 15. Jesus said something here, and this is what got me thinking about this message. I think it was from Wayne's message a couple weeks back. He went to the scripture. Maybe it was the Passover service. We read through John chapter 15. But I was just thinking about this. John chapter 15, verse 15. Jesus was right before he was going to be crucified. So it's in line with the holy days this season, the Passover days of unleavened bread. You can imagine, here Jesus knew that the next day he was going to die. And how sincere this was, the amount of emotion that he must have had at this point in time with his disciples. Imagine if you knew tomorrow you were going to die. How poignant would those messages be to your loved ones? Here Jesus tells his disciples, John chapter 15, verse 15, henceforth I call you not servants. Now, Jesus is called the King of Kings, and it could be his right to call us subjects, wouldn't it? That's what kings of England did, and lords. But here Jesus said, henceforth I call you not servants, for the servant knows not what his Lord does, but I've called you friends. For all things that I have heard of my Father, I have made known unto you. You know, in Exodus chapter 33, God said, and the Lord spake unto Moses face to face, as a man speaks unto his friend. That's amazing. In James, we're told that Abraham believed God, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness, and he was called the friend of God. You know, these days of unleavened bread aren't as much about getting the sin out or the leavening out. That's important. But see, that paves the way. We have to do that before we can really connect with Christ. These days are all about Jesus, what he did for us, what kind of friend he was for us. They're about connecting more closely. In the prayer, it was said that we could be more closely connected with Jesus. Do you consider Jesus your friend? Think of the best friend that you thought about when I said, who is your best friend? The type of relationship you have with that person. Is that the type of relationship you have with Jesus? More importantly, brethren, I want to ask you, would Jesus consider you a friend? What does it really mean to be a friend? What's a true friend? And what is it all about? What is this thing called best friend? Is it really just letting someone see your Facebook page? What is it? So I want to take a little bit of time and go through a little bit about what it means to be a friend. What are the attributes? How do you know when you have a good friend? Then I want us to think about our relationship with Christ and think about the type of friendship we have with him. First thing I want to do is just read the definition here of friendship. This is from Webster's 1828 dictionary. Look up friend. What does it mean to be a friend? Well, a friend is one who is attached. That's the first thing in the definition. You're connected. You're attached. Think about my friends when I was a kid. My best friend, John Satala. We pretty much did everything together. One who is attached to another by affection. One who entertains for another sentiments of esteem. There's respect there. Affection. Respect and affection which lead him or her to desire his company. We like to be around our friends. We enjoy their company. A friend is one who seeks to promote their friend's happiness and prosperity. They look out for each other. Steve said that it was great that Mark was able to step up and do the offertory and that Steve had his back covered for him. I was thinking about this famous quote I just heard. Everything is cool and awesome when you're part of a team. Anyone hear that quote before? My kids did because it was part of the Lego movie we just saw a couple weeks ago. It's a little catchy tune. I'm not going to sing it for you. But no, really. It's great to have friends, isn't it? Because friends cover for you. They step in when you need help. I want to read about, in the scripture that we just read, the word friend is a Greek word called philos. If you look up the word in Greek, it means a beloved, a dear friend, friendly. And if I look up a word study, this is Help's word study, philos means a friend, someone dearly loved, prized, in a personal, intimate way. A trusted confidant, someone you can trust. You know that you can tell that person your innermost weaknesses, fears. They're not going to go gossip and tell other people. You trust them. You can confide in that person. That's philos, held in dear personal affection. Just a few quotes. I want to share a couple quotes about friendship. Abraham Lincoln said, "Do I not destroy my enemies when I make them my friends?" Henry Ford said, "My best friend is the one who brings out the best in me." It's interesting. Not the one that I have the most fun with, but the one that pushes me to be more than I can be, that looks out for my interests. Friendship is the hardest thing in the world to explain. Another quote. It's not something you learn in school, but if you haven't learned the meaning of friendship, you really haven't learned anything. That was Muhammad Ali. Friendship is important, brethren. We need friends. We're all social people, social beings. Everyone needs sometimes someone to hold them up, someone to lean on. Dale Carnegie said, you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people to become interested in you. It's kind of an interesting truth. But in summary, if I think about what it means to be a friend, you think about your best friends, why they're so special to you. The words attached, close, personal come to mind. Affection, esteem and respect. We enjoy each other's company. We like to be around each other. Friends look out for each other. Friends aren't afraid to tell each other the truth, even if it's going to cause an argument. You see, that's the difference between someone who gives you lip service, likes you just to be because you're fun or whatever. They find you doing something wrong, get into some wrong things. Teenagers, listen to this. If they don't pull you aside and correct you because they love you, care about you, and say, you're going down the wrong path, you're making a bad decision, they're not really a true friend. See, true friends aren't afraid to put your relationship on the line to tell you the truth. It takes courage to be a true friend. So before I get into this and think about the question of what type of friendship do you have with the people in your life, and what type of friend are you to Jesus, I want to think first about one basic tenet here. The most basic thing you need to be friends with someone is to realize that that someone really is a someone, that they're a person. Can you be friends with the sky? I guess some people would think you can be friends with the sky. But if I'm just practical about it, all of my best friends are people. And they're alive. If you want to have a relationship with someone, you have to believe that they're a person. Now, I bring this up, it might sound obvious, but how many people out there don't realize that God is an actual person? The Trinity actually says that God has no parts. You can't define God. My dad told me a story about my aunt who doesn't believe in a personal God. God is just a force out there. There are a lot of people that believe that there's some energy out there that created everything. But how can you be friends with some energy out there? See, before you can have a friendship with Jesus, you have to know that Jesus is a person. What does it mean to be a person? Is Jesus alive? There are people who say God is dead. Maybe he lived at one point, but he is dead now. I want to turn to a couple scriptures here, because you have to believe first that God is a living person with feelings and hopes and desires, and that he can be touched. Turn back with me to Exodus chapter 33. I want to share a story, a fascinating story about Moses. I actually referred to this in the introduction. Exodus chapter 33, verse 9. Let's turn back there and read about this wonderful relationship that Moses had with the Almighty God. Now, we can go back, and before I get into this, first chapter of John, you can read about the fact that this being that Moses is about to talk with. We just watched the movie The Ten Commandments with the kids. The burning bush up there. Now that movie got it wrong. It's just energy, this burning bush. You're going to see what God really looks like here. But we read about this story, and Moses certainly had a special relationship with God. So Exodus chapter 33, let's read about this fascinating story. If I can find it in my book. Terry always tells me to give a little bit more time to let people find the scriptures, so here you go. Moses chapter 33. And it came to pass, as Moses, this is verse 9, we'll break into verse 9. And it came to pass, as Moses entered into the tabernacle, the cloudy pillar descended and stood at the door of the tabernacle, and the Lord talked with Moses. So in the tabernacle, there was this pillar, this gray cloud that went and obscured the tabernacle. And the people saw the cloudy pillar stand at the tabernacle door. So all the people could see is this pillar of this cloud, and all the people rose up and worshipped, every man in his tent. And the Lord spake unto Moses face to face, as a man speaks unto his friend. If you just think about that for a second, how awesome would it be for us to be there, to be able to stand face to face and have God speak to us? And the Lord spake unto Moses face to face as a man speaks unto his friend. And he turned again into the camp, but his servant Joshua the son of Nun, a young man, departed not out of the tabernacle. And Moses said unto the Lord, See that you sayest unto me, Bring up this people, and you have not let me know whom you will send with me. You have said, I know you by name. And thou hast also found grace in my sight. Now, therefore, I pray you, if I have found grace in your sight. So here Moses is pleading with God or kind of having conversation with God. He says, if I've seen grace in your sight, show me now your way. Show me what you're all about, God. In other words, show me what you look like. What an honor God gave to Moses. Show me now your way, that I may know you, that I may find grace in your sight, and consider that this nation is thy people. Drop down to verse 17. And the Lord said unto Moses, I will do this thing also that you have spoken, for you have found grace in my sight. And I know you by name. What a blessing that is, that the God who created the universe, this is Jesus the Christ before he was made into a man. We know that from the first chapter of John. This is your Savior, saying, I know you by name. So he said, because I do know you by name. And he said in verse 18, I beseech you, Moses said, I beseech you, show me your glory. And he said, I will make all my goodness pass before you. And I will proclaim the name of the Lord before you. And I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and will show mercy on whom I will show mercy. And he said, thou canst not see my face, for there shall no man see me and live. So God told Moses that I'm going to show you what I look like, but you can't look at my face, because if you see my face, you'll die. And the Lord said, behold, there is a place by me, and you shall stand upon a rock. And it shall come to pass, while my glory passes by, that I will put you in a cleft of the rock. In other words, I'm going to protect you. I'm going to put you and hide you away. And as I pass by, it says, I will cover you with my hand while I pass by. And then I will take my hand away, and you shall see my back parts, but my face shall not be seen. And so God did this for Moses. He put him in this little cliff in the rock, put his hand up in front of, because he was behind this cloud, came out of the cloud, must have removed it so Moses could see him. And as God walked by, Moses was able to see God walking away from him. Now, what's interesting about this story, other than the fact that that's an awesome story, Moses got to see the very glory of God. And he had a hand, back parts, a face. He wasn't this blob. What Moses saw was a human being in a glorious spiritual body. How do I know that? Because in Genesis chapter 127, God said he created man in his own image. See, God doesn't look like us. We look like him. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. John chapter 14, Jesus said, have I been so long time with you? He was talking to Thomas. And yet hast thou not known me, or Philip, I'm sorry. He was talking to Philip. When Philip said, show me the Father. And Jesus said, how long have I been with you, Philip? He that has seen me has seen the Father. And Jesus was in the shape of a man. This is a person. You can read many examples of when God was angry. God was happy. He has emotions. We're told that Jesus can be touched with the feeling of our infirmities. Jesus wept. Jesus is a person with feelings. He can respond in friendship. He can respond to you in your actions. You can have a relationship with Jesus. Now the question about it, is he alive? In Hebrews chapter 10:31, it says, it is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. Yes. You can read a concordance, get a concordance and look up the word living, and you'll find that there are many, many examples in scriptures that refer to Jesus Christ and God as a living God. In fact, we're told that Jesus is at the right hand of God the Father right now, making intercession for us daily. So Jesus is a living being. Look over here in John chapter 20. Let's turn there real quick. John chapter 20, verse 26. This was Jesus after he was resurrected. After 8 days, chapter 20, verse 26, and after 8 days, again, his disciples were within, and Thomas was with them. Then came Jesus, the doors being shut, and stood in the midst and said, "Peace be unto you." So Jesus just appeared in the middle of the room. And Thomas said to him, or then he said to Thomas, because Thomas was doubting, he says, "Reach hither thy finger, and behold my hands." And his hands must have still had those holes in them. "Peace be unto you." Or he says, "Reach hither thy finger, and behold thy hands, and reach hither thy hand, and thrust it into my side," where the hole was where he was stabbed. "And be not faithless, but believing." And Thomas answered and said unto him, after he must have done it, stuck his hand in there and saw that this was Jesus who was crucified. He says, "My Lord and my God." Now there were eyewitnesses here. And Jesus said unto him, "Thomas, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are they that have not seen and yet have believed." Yes, Jesus is alive. He's a person, and you can have a friendship with him. So now I want to shift gears a little bit, talk about what does it really mean to be a true friend? How do you know if you have a true friend? If I think about my true friends, one of the first things I think about is the people that really know me. And there's different degrees of how well I'm known. I would say my best human friend is my wife. She knows me better than anybody else, I'll guarantee it. That's a blessing. It's a great blessing. I don't know how many of you have had a relationship with someone for many years. Mark referred to the relationship that he has with Chris. I would bet that you guys would consider yourselves best friends, I would hope. You see, my acquaintances don't know me very well. We're friendly. But my truest, best friends, my family, my best friend from the Marines, James. I haven't spoken to my friend James. He was at my wedding. I speak to him a couple times a year. So it's not about going out and having fun. But you know what? When I talk to my friend James, it's like we never left. It's like I was with him yesterday, because we went through so much together in the Marines that I know him, I would say, better than almost anybody, and he knows me. See, true friends really, really know you. How do you get to know somebody? You got to spend time with them. You see, sometimes you find out who someone really is in difficult times. When everything's easy, you don't really get to know someone. But if you've been so lucky to have went through a trial, shoulder to shoulder, with a friend, that friendship is much stronger when you're through it. Because that person gets to know you in a way that that person never knew you before, and vice versa. You see, going through trials and experiencing things together, that word study said that friendship is experience-based. You get to know people by spending time with them. You know, Jesus says that he knows you better than anybody else in the world, better than your spouse, better than your mom and dad. Turn with me over to, I'll just read Romans chapter 8, and then turn with me to Luke. Just go ahead and turn to Luke chapter 12. I'm going to read Romans 8. So Romans 8:26, "Likewise the Spirit also helps our infirmities, for we know not what we should pray for as we ought." Sometimes we don't know even what to pray for. We sit down, we want to pray, but it just doesn't seem to come out. But the Spirit, God's Spirit, makes intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. And he that searches the hearts knows what's in the mind of the Spirit. Jesus said he searches deep inside of your heart. Now look over in Luke chapter 12. Luke chapter 12, verse 1. Give you a second to get over there. Talking about referencing unleavened bread, I think is very fitting as we're in the last day of unleavened bread. Luke chapter 12, verse 1. "In the meantime, When there were gathered together an innumerable multitude of people, insomuch that they trode one upon another, he began to say unto his disciples first of all. So he's going to give them a lesson about what leavening means. It says, beware you of the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. For there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, neither hid that should not be known. Therefore, whatsoever you have spoken in darkness shall be heard in the light. See, you can't hide anything from Jesus. He sees it all. Isn't it interesting how sometimes when we go through trouble, we go through trials, sometimes we forget to pray? Or maybe we're ashamed. Maybe we made a mistake. And maybe we just are so humbled that we don't want to bring it before Jesus. Well, let me tell you something, brethren. He knows. He knows. He knows already. We're told right here, whatsoever you have spoken in darkness shall be heard in the light. And that which you have spoken in the ear in the closets shall be proclaimed upon the housetops. And I say unto you, my friends, be not afraid of them that kill the body, and after that have no more that they can do. But I will forewarn you whom you shall fear. Fear him which after he has killed hath power to cast into hell or the grave. Yea, I say unto you, fear him. Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 farthings, and not one of them is forgotten before God? But even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. See, I give God a break on that one. He doesn't have to count very high for me. But he probably has the hair on my beard numbered. But God knows us. He knows us better than anybody else. He knows us better than we know ourselves, brethren. He knows our strengths, our weaknesses, our fears. He knows every part of us. God says, fear not, therefore. You are of more value than many sparrows. Psalms 139, thou knowest, David said, O Lord, thou hast searched me and known me. You know my downsitting, my uprising. Thou understandest my thoughts afar off. Thou compassest my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. For there is not a word in my tongue, but lo, O Lord, thou knowest it altogether. Truest friends really understand us. Brethren, God understands you. He knows everything you're going through. Hebrews says that Jesus is our high priest and he makes intercession for us. He's there and he understands and he can feel what it feels like. He can empathize with us. The first part of true friends is to be known, and no one knows you better, brethren, than Jesus Christ. The second part of really being a true friend is that true friends look out for you. They seek your best interest. Isn't that true? How many of us have had friends that were really friendly for a while, but when the rubber hit the road and it got tough, all of a sudden they were gone? How many of you had friends that were able to pull you aside and had the courage to tell you something you didn't want to hear? God says that that's a true friend. Jesus tells us in Revelation chapter 3, as many as I love, I rebuke and chasten. See, Jesus isn't afraid to tell us the truth. In fact, that's what this whole book is, the truth. He looks out for your best interest. He wants you to be the best you can be. In Philippians, we're told, chapter 1, verse 6, being confident of this very thing, that he which has begun a good work in you will perform it until the day of Jesus Christ. He's going to finish it. He'll never give up on you. That friend is someone you can count on. Jesus has your back, brethren. Turn with me to Matthew chapter 18. Look over here in the 18th chapter of Matthew. Jesus talking to his disciples again, talking to us through this inspired word. Jesus, chapter 18, verse 1, says, "At the same time came the disciples unto Jesus, saying, Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And Jesus called a little child unto him, and set him in the midst of them." Now I'll tell you, children are easy to love, aren't they? No one could have told me what it would feel like to have children. For those of you that have been blessed to have children, you know what I'm talking about. I look at my 3 little kids, especially Allie, my little girl, Daddy's little girl, or any of them, and I instantly love them the day they were born. I don't know what it was. God programmed that in. God says we're his children, and he is love. If I can love that much, how much more does God love you? God says, "As many as I love, I rebuke and chasten." Philippians says that he'll look out for your best interests. See, when my kids fall, we run over there. We want to hug them and hold them. I look out for Michael and Allie and Jason. God looks out for you that way. Think about the fact that God gave us all this instruction in the holy days to teach us. Not to keep us in the dark, but to teach us good and right, so that it could be good with us. Chapter 18 here, Jesus says, "Truly I say unto you," in verse 3, "except you be converted and become as little children, you shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoso shall receive one such little child in my name receives me." He's talking about those that receive each other. "But whoso shall offend one of these little ones, which believe in me, it were better for him." Now, this is where the protective mode kicks in. This is where God, as your friend, says, "Hey, I have your back." Jesus said, "Whoever offends one of these little ones," that's you, "which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck and that he were drowned in the depth of the sea." See, Jesus cares about you, and he looks out for you just as much and more than you look out for your children. Drop here down in verse 10. "Take heed that you despise not one of these little ones, for I say unto you that in heaven their angels do always behold the face of my Father which is in heaven." Now, isn't that amazing, brethren? Your angels. Do you ever think about the fact that God loved you so much that he gave you angels? I don't know if you ever think about that. Jesus is looking out for you. He is a good friend and seeks your best interest. He's not afraid to tell you when you're wrong and to bring you through trials, to help you see things that you shouldn't, that you have to get over. He wants to mold and shape you into something better than you can possibly imagine. He's bringing us to be born into his family, to be like him. The third thing, brethren, is true friends share a common purpose. How many of you have friends that were best friends at one point and you kind of went different paths in your life, have different values now, and you drift away? That happens, doesn't it? I have many friends from high school. I still consider them good friends, but I don't spend much time with them. Especially if someone starts getting into things that, really just aren't our cup of tea. It's hard to really stay connected with people like that. That's one of the blessings we have here in this church, brethren. We all share a common interest, don't we? When you're married, you share a common interest. Families share a common interest. God says his church is a family. Let's turn over to Ephesians chapter 4. Read a few more scriptures here. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1, talking about sharing that common interest. It says, I, therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that you walk worthy of the vocation or the work wherewith you are called, with all lowliness and meekness, verse 2, and longsuffering, forbearing one another in love, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body, one Spirit, even as you are called, in one hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God, one Father of all, who is above all and through all and in you all. Brethren, that's about as common interest and as much unity as you can imagine and cram into one sentence. In Amos 3, verse 3, God says, can two walk together except they be agreed? What a blessing it is that we have each other, that we can come together on the Sabbath, the people of like mind. And that's a bond. I hope you consider that you have good friends in the church, because we are united with common interests. It continues to say that all of God's people are joined together through Christ. It's like a body jointly fit together. We are one. We're a team. And it's good to be part of a team. I hope you appreciate that. Friends share common interests. The last thing, brethren, I think about when I think of true friends, what makes my best friends. And this is something that's really important to get your mind around if you want to have a relationship with Jesus the Christ. Friends are equals. Friends are equals. Now think about that a little bit. Jesus said, I don't call you servants. Can a king who looks down on his subjects really be friends to them? Real friends have mutual respect for each other. They're equals. You see, my children are equal with me. It's hard to, maybe at first pass you say, no, I'm older, I'm more mature, I'm their dad. But you know what? Michael and Jason and Allie are just as much Rusinko as I am a Rusinko. They are equally Rusinkos. And I'm bringing up my children someday to be full-grown adults, and when they're adults, I'm going to have a different relationship with them. They're going to grow up to be mature, adult Rusinkos. And we'll be equals. Right now I'm in charge. There's no question about that. I have them stand at attention and give them orders. I could do it right now. You'd see them. They'd come right up. 10, hut. Your mission, if you choose to accept, is to go upstairs. When I say go, brush your teeth, go potty, and get your jammies on. And they do it. But when they're 21 years old, they're not going to do that. We're going to have a different relationship. You see, it's hard to imagine that we are equal with God. In fact, when Jesus said that, people wanted to throw stones at him. They wanted to kill him because they thought it was blasphemy. But brethren, if you want to be friends with Jesus, you have to realize that you are special. Not anything that you did, not anything to be proud of, but you are beings created in the image of God. Romans chapter 8, verse 16, the Spirit itself bears witness with our spirit that we are the children of God. Just like my children are the children of me and Terry, you are the children of God. And if children, what a relationship. If children and heirs, heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ, if so be that we suffer with him, that we may be also glorified together. That we could grow up someday and have that mature, relationship with Christ. Man to woman, as spirit beings someday, standing in front of Jesus, having a conversation the way Moses had a conversation with him. Turn over to Hebrews chapter 2, verse 6, because this is a fascinating truth that many people just don't get. Hebrews chapter 2, verse 6. Who are you? But one in a certain place testified, he's referring back to Psalms, saying, what is man that thou art mindful of him? Who is man, God? God, the Creator, Almighty God, would even care about us. What is man that you are mindful of him, or the Son of Man that you would visit him? You have made him a little lower than the angels, for now, a little lower. You crowned him. We're royalty, brethren. You are a royal family. Special. You crowned him with glory and with honor, and you set him over the works of your hands. You have put all things in subjection under his feet, all things. For in that he put all in subjection under him, he left nothing that is not put under him. Speaking of the future time when we're mature. But now we see not yet all things put under him, so we haven't achieved that yet. We're still children, but you can see our destiny. But we see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels. Think about that. Jesus was also made lower than the angels. Jesus made the angels. For the suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor, that he by the grace of God should taste death for every man. For it became him for whom are all things, and by whom are all things. In other words, Jesus was the one who created everything. It became him in bringing many sons unto glory, to make the captain of their salvation perfect through sufferings. For both he that sanctifies and they who are sanctified are all of one, for which cause he is not ashamed to call you brethren. Philippians chapter 2 says, who, being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God. Jesus, when he was in the form of God as a man, didn't think it robbery to say that he was equal with God. In Psalms 82, verse 6, it says, I have said, you are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. God wants you to understand that you are gods. You are part of his family. You're not grown up into the family yet, but you are on a pathway. You're in his family, and he's raising you. Just as I am raising with Terry my 3 children to be grown adults someday. What an awesome privilege and blessing that is, brethren. If you want to be friends with someone, you have to see each other with mutual respect and as equals. And God sees you that way. Now consider, brethren, what God has done for you, what Jesus has done for you as a friend. He's created the universe, the earth. He made food taste good. I'm glad he did that. He created family. What a wonderful thing family is. He created the holy days so that we could learn all about him. He saved us. He died for us. He died for you. Jesus said, greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. See, if you know that Jesus died for you, then you know that Jesus is your friend. He proved it. He laid down his life for you. He suffered for you. Jesus loves you. He provides you with angelic protection. I can tell you stories when I was in the Marines where I got into some trouble, I think I might have told this story before where I was driving a car one time. I was, doing something stupid. I was out a little bit too late. I probably had a couple things to drink that I shouldn't have had to drink, and I was driving home with my buddies, and I fell asleep behind the wheel. Coming up on an on-ramp from one freeway to another freeway, and on this side of the on-ramp, it was a big turn. And I fell asleep, brethren, before I started making the turn. And on the other side of that turn was a cliff. And I woke up with a boom, and I was right where the freeway comes up and goes over the top of another freeway and comes down into the other freeway about 2 in the morning. Where they joined, there was a berm about 18 inches high. And I had a little Toyota Corolla. There was no way that car could get up on top of that berm without being damaged. No way. I woke up on top of that berm on my car with these big steel light posts right in front of me. I turned, flew off backwards, all the way around, was facing back up the on-ramp. My buddy James, the guy I mentioned, was with me. He woke up too, by the way. And he looks at me, and he goes, "No one saw us." I turned around. I did not have a problem falling asleep on the way back the rest of the trip. White knuckles, wide awake. I knew, no question in my mind. I looked at my car, there was no damage to my car. God saved my life that day. Jesus says that our angels are always beholding the Father, that he has angels around us protecting us. Imagine having, in time of need, or if someone wants to come and beat you up or get you in trouble, a powerful friend that has your back. Well, there is no stronger friend that you could possibly have than Jesus Christ, the creator of all things, who could move mountains. Sometimes I feel foolish worrying about the things I worry about. If you just realize that Jesus is with you. What an awesome friend, brethren. Jesus looks out for you. He says he'll never give you more than you can handle. He teaches you. He guides you. He loves you. I'll guarantee he loves you more than you have ever loved anybody in your whole life. He says he is love. He invented it. As my dad would say, he leads the league in love. Jesus says in John chapter 15, "As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you." Verse 9, chapter 15 of John. "Continue in my love. If you keep my commandments, you shall abide in my love." It says Abraham believed God, and God called him a friend. All Jesus wants is for you just to believe him, believe in him, listen to him. He's just looking out for your best interest. Keep his commandments. Stay connected with him. Keep your life aligned with his life. "If you keep my commandments," he says, verse 10, "you shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things have I spoken unto you, that my joy might remain in you, and that your joy might be full." He wants us to be happy, brethren. That's why he tells us to keep his commandments. He says, "This is my commandment, that you love one another." Jesus says if we do good things for each other, it's like we're doing them for him. If we are good friends to each other, we are good friends to Jesus. He says, "This is the commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends," Jesus tells you. "And if you do whatsoever I command you, henceforth I call you not servants." See, if you just obey Jesus, he says, you're not my servants, Again, for the servant knows not what his Lord does, but I have called you friends. For all things that I have heard of my Father I have made known unto you. You have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and ordained you that you should go and bring forth fruit, and that your fruit should remain, that whatsoever you shall ask of the Father in my name, he may give it to you. Brethren, these days of unleavened bread are about connecting more closely with Jesus, our Savior. I asked at the beginning of the message, who is your friend? Who is your best friend? If you consider what Jesus did for you, who he is, what he's given you, the fact that he sustains our lives. We wouldn't even have breath if it weren't for Jesus, because he is the creator. We take for granted that our heart beats. If I had to remember to make my heart beat, I'd be dead. Thank God, thank you, Jesus, that you keep my heart beating, because I'd forget. We take these little miracles for granted, brethren, but Jesus sustains you every single day. Every day is a blessing of life. What a friend that he looks out for you. Consider what this means, brethren. How well do you know Jesus? How good of a friend are you to him? Do you really know him? Do you take the time to get to know Jesus? Or do you just listen to what some priest tells you? He's got it covered. Or do you get on your hands and knees and pray and talk and reason with God? Moses talked to God as a friend. He reasoned with him. God will reason with you. You can remind God of some of the promises he made when you pray. You can talk to God. He wants a relationship with you. Do you share common interests with Jesus? Or when the rubber hits the road and things get tough, do you do what the disciples did and just kind of, like what Peter did, I don't know him, denied him 3 times. See, best friends are going in the same place together. Do you look out for Jesus' interest? Do you stand up for Jesus? Do his will? Do you stand in the gap when it counts? And do we understand our calling? Do we understand that we are his brethren and that he's not ashamed to call us that? That we are being grown and nurtured and brought up into the very family of God as God, powerful God beings. Brethren, I can't imagine a better friend that you could have when you need someone. When times get tough and you feel alone, and you're going through a trial, it's good to have friends. But turn your attention to your best friend, to Jesus. Brethren, how blessed is it to have Jesus, with all he's done for us, as our very, very best friend.
Thank you, Dave.